Still not seeing it. Okay, live
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to this session of TOI Dialogues where we speak with experts across various subjects on the issues that matter. The Karnataka elections will be held on the 10th of May, and it's going to be a very closely watched election given it's one of the big state elections before the national elections in 2024. To decode what could be the results before they're announced on the 13th of May, we're in conversation with Sugata Srinivasaraju. If you're a TY Plus subscriber, you'd have read his insightful columns on Indian politics. He's also the author of multiple books, including Furrows in a Field, The Unexplored Life of H.D. Deve Gowda. Sugata, thanks. Welcome to this
Thank you,
session
Arun.
of TY
Yeah, yeah.
Dialogues, and welcome and thanks for
Thank you,
taking the
Arun.
time out.
Thank you, Arun. Very happy to be here.
So let's start with the present BJP government. It came to be thanks to a switch in legislators and then saw a change in chief minister midterm with B.S. Yediyurappa effectively being retired. How
Yeah.
do you evaluate this Basavaraj Bomai government?
Well, Baswaraj Bommai was a replacement of Yediyurappa, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and he came in around mid 2021. So he was brought in so that the party, I think, was very getting very uncomfortable with Yediyurappa and his style of politics. There was a particular mission with which he was brought in, which is it was not stated, of course, but then I think it was done with a certain mission. The central party, wanted to take control of the state unit. See, for a very long time, Yediyurappa ran the state unit and he ran it his way. So Yediyurappa never needed the central high command or the central leaders to come and even campaign here vigorously for him to win, or the party to win, or the party to perform well. So, a Vajpayee or an Advani, of course, they would come. But then it had very little impact because Yediyurappa had built up this whole thing on a very different kind of social engineering, which was not very familiar to leaders in Delhi. So I have always, in my Toy Plus columns, I've always called him a Mandal politician with a Hindutva air cover. So the air cover was thin, but the Mandal politician that he was extremely well knit with the grassroots. So this was the kind of politics that he was doing, but his social engineering had a limitation in the sense both the times the party came to power, which was in 2008 and 2018, both the times they did not get a majority on their own. They fell short by, say, 5-10 seats. And this, I think the central high command of the party or the central leadership of the party thought that this was the kind of maximum that they could reach with the kind of politics that Yediyurappa was doing. So they thought they should try something else. But again, they did not want to take a risk. So they replaced Yediyurappa with another Lingayat chief minister, and that was Basuraj Bommai. And Basuraj Bommai was chosen by the High Command, but they got Yediyurappa to publicly endorse him, right? So he was the least of the, devils that Yediyurappa thought would be, because the other choices which were put before Yediyurappa were people who were openly abusing him in the days that he was in the build up to the days that he was changed. So Bommai comes in, and Bommai, what does he do? Bommai, for the first 10 months, is playing a very hardcore Hindutva game. He is raising one issue after another. In fact, I still remember the very first statement that Bommai made was, "For every action there will be a reaction." This was something that was very familiar to people who were following, say, Uttar Pradesh politics, or even Madhya Pradesh politics, or politics in the north of India. Karnataka was not familiar with that kind of rhetoric. See, if people may ask, was there no Hindutva in Karnataka at all? Yes, there was Hindutva, but Hindutva was confined to the coastal districts of Karnataka. Hindutva was an air cover. People would, that was the ideological spin that would always be given, but elections were won on something else. And if Edurappa was representing the real electoral game, people like Anant Kumar, who was a Brahmin, who did not have the numbers for his community, would always play that ideological card because that would give him some kind of an identity. So Basuraj Bomai now is a strange kettle of fish because he comes in both as a Lingayat and as an ideological player. For the first 10 months, the newspapers and television channels are flooded with news from Karnataka, and all of them are about Hindutva. The ideological spin that was being given, hijab, halal, azan, Tipu Sultan. You can just go on counting. Hanuman Janmabhoomi. I don't know where that sprang up suddenly from. See, all kinds of such things got raised, and it started, having a kind of recoil after a point of time. And the BJP, see, it's BJP is not like the Congress party, which does not wake up. BJP tests its formula, its ideology, its leaders, and sort of injects corrections very quickly. So I think 10 months or 15 months down the line, 10 months or 12 months down the line, they realized that this is actually creating a kind of negative vibe across the state, because the reason is that the composition of Karnataka, the demographic composition of Karnataka is very different from any other state. And here, there are different elements, different units that came together to become a single state in 1956. But emotionally, the entire state has not become one because the dialects are different. There are huge cultural differences, and if anybody has studied how this whole reunification or sorry, not reunification, reorganization happened in 1956, the old Mysore region, the princely Mysore kingdom, the leaders from that kingdom had kind of resisted this whole thing. They did not want this whole thing to be unified, because they thought that the GDP would come down. That was the overt reason that was being given, because poorer districts. See, the other districts that were joining Karnataka were all in the fringe areas of other states, say the Bombay Presidency, or Nizam's Hyderabad, or Madras Presidency. So they were undernourished and underdeveloped kind of areas, and they thought this will suddenly collapse the GDP of the state. And Mysore, was an extremely well-to-do state. In colonial language, it got the 22 gun salute for the Maharaja, which means it was a very flourishing kind of state. And that was the problem. So they were resisting, and but the politicians started listing out cultural problems. They said we don't dress like them. For example, the peta that is worn, the Mysore peta, is completely different from the rumal that is worn in north of Karnataka. Food is different. You can't just make sense of you can't gastronomically align the two areas. Dress, food, dialect, religious approach, or ideological approaches into larger things were all entirely different, and there was a lot of resistance to this state. So this is the kind of backdrop or the demographic composition of the state that one needs to remember when one is talking about politics of Karnataka, because this Hindutva flattening of the state was not happening. So the BJP thought it could create a more universal electorate in Karnataka. Just a kind of bipolar electorate, where the Congress party would be on the other side and would be always dubbed as secular, as appeasing Muslims, and then here was the Nationalist Party, which would pick everybody and pick the 80% Hindu vote, and then win each time with, say, 49% or 50% vote share. See, when we speak of vote share again, Karnataka, the vote shares of the winning party has always been very small. It's except for the Devaraja's election. And whenever the Janta party, it's always been a three-cornered contest in Karnataka. So there is always three parties, so the margins cannot always be big. So for instance, when the Congress party won the election in 2013 with 122 seats or 121 seats, their vote share was just about 34%, which is incredible. And the BJP and the Janta Dal had got around 44 seats, and the person who had cut the BJP seats at that time was Yediyurappa with around 8% votes. He had just walked away with that, and that had completely decimated the BJP in Karnataka. There was another player who was Sri Ramulu, the Reddy brothers, the ally of the Reddy brothers, who was ST, and he was controlling the Valmiki vote, and he had walked away with 4% or 3%, and with 3 or 4 MLAs, and that had completely brought down the BJP vote share. And BJP, as such, was only a central Karnataka and North Karnataka party, and not the southern Karnataka party. So these divisions we'll come to a little later. But broadly speaking, to answer your first question about Bommai government, Bommai tried to do Hindutva, try to bring in the Hindutva agenda aggressively in the first 10 months. It was resisted in various ways, and then they realized that they had to go back to the old formula, which is the caste identity politics. So they start reworking on that. And I'll end the answer for the first question by just giving you one example. Raghupati Bhatt, a guy who led the hijab campaign for the BJP from the front, has been denied a ticket. So that should tell you that the ideological concerns were just completely put aside, and they just started reworking their casting. And I'll come to the casting as we speak.
So that in fact is my next question. That in terms of the, you wrote in one of your columns and you mentioned just now how Yediyurappa is a sort of mandal man, which is a man who looks at those caste quotas very carefully. And
Yes,
you wrote in your column that with quota politics in the state, you wrote that this election could change that sort of politics in the state altogether, because the caste rules themselves are, the quotas are being realigned to suit
yes.
politics as they are. Could you talk about how significant this sort of quota reshuffle has been and will be in the state going ahead?
Yeah. So, Arun, there are two dominant communities which have controlled political power in Karnataka. When I say dominant, I don't mean that they are demographically the largest. See, see, the Lingayats who have dominated Karnataka politics and have controlled polit- power politics in Karnataka are just about 14 to 16%. We don't know the exact numbers because the caste census details have not been released. So it's your guess and my guess. It's kind of conjecture from different sources. So 14 to 16% is a good average to give them. Then there are Okaligas in the south of Karnataka. They're anywhere between 11 to 12%. So they are a community, and these two communities, why they control power in Karnataka is because they are communities which are concentrated in certain areas. So when a community is concentrated in a certain area, what happens is that your strike rate increases. That is, your seat gain increases. Even if your 50% are scattered across the state, you may not get that strike rate, right? You become only a supporting caste for the dominant community. So that's the reason why these two communities have been able to control power politics in Karnataka. And the southern uh, Karnataka, controlled by Vokaligas, is the old Mysore logic. So they were dominant right from then, and of course they were not a extremely advanced, economically very advanced community. They're Shudras, but numerically higher, tilling the land, and they are the Deve Gowda community, right? And then there is the Lingayats, who are extremely, on the other hand, very very organized. Right, for 3 4 centuries they have been very very organized, and I'll tell you why they were extremely organized. So you have an organized caste, a community, and you have a slightly disorganized community, but still a powerful community because of the numbers and the concentration of the numbers. And the Lingayats, I told you, were organized. The reason the Lingayats were organized were because there was this mutt system, this semi-annuity system, and Lingayats were an organized caste. a community. And Lingayatism was about a classless society, an egalitarian society, a casteless society, which Baswana and Basveshwara creates in 12th century. And then, of course, now all these stratifications have come back because people don't remember that they accepted the casteless and the casteless thing, but then they've all brought back. They have dual identity within the Lingayat thing. So they have their original caste, which they mention, and then they also say we are Lingayat. So they actually switch between these two things whenever it's convenient. If you want to sort of claim a certain government quota, they will say this, and when you want to vote, they say we are a Lingayat. So these things do happen in all communities, and it happens among them as well. And so they were organized, and these people were not so organized. And Okaligas, after a point, after the 60s or the 70s, started imitating the structural, organized patterns of the Lingayats. That is, trying to create their own mutts, trying to, the mutt was there, but to empower that mutt, make it, align educational institutions, medical institutions, put crores, thousands of crores at the disposal of the pontiff, you know, and then also create this political alignment and create Okaliga pride, and all that started after the 70s, 80s. That is the time around which it sort of really became very prominent. By then, the Lingayats were already sort of very organized, and if a pontiff decided that a certain line should go across, and that would get set, and that would go across. The community was very closely linked to the seminary system, the mutt system. So this is essentially that one needs to remember when one speaks about caste in Karnataka. So, and then you have the third caste, which was almost like a shadow of the Okaligas for a very long time. That is the Kurubas. So there are some six. I mean, again, notionally they're around 6 or 7%, or 4 to 6% of the state. But they always were a shadow of the Okaligas. But then at a certain point, they again found their identity. And Siddaramaya, who was the chief minister between 2013 and 18, belongs to that community. And they become interesting and important because, see, as I told you earlier, this is one of those communities that is spread across the state. Unlike the concentrated Okaligas and Lingayats and Okaligas are also spread across, especially Lingayats. But then, their concentration is also very high in the north of Karnataka and central Karnataka. But Kurubas are spread across the state. And what this means electorally and politically is that in a particular constituency, if a politician is a Lingayat, he needs a supporting caste of two communities or one community to win, and that could be a Kuruba community or some other community which is dominant in that area. So the demographic composition is such that it is one dominant community plus two smaller communities. So this ensures victory. So a politician plays it accordingly. So if BJP is cultivating the Lingayats, they're also cultivating n number of smaller communities so that they become the supporting caste for their victory. So this thing about the Kurubas was that they were a very efficient supporting caste, and once they got their own identity, Deve Gowda, of course, was responsible for honing and harnessing the power of the Kuruba thing via Sidramaya. Sidramaya was his shagird, as a student, and he developed him. Sidramaya had won as an independent candidate from Mysore in '83, and then he becomes Janta Dal, and then it stays with Deve Gowda till 2006, till he is expelled from the party. And so that was a very successful combination. So they were playing a supporting cast. But then once he came out of that, the Kurubas became a supporting cast to different political parties. Like the Valmikis, the ST community. I was telling you earlier about Sri Ramalu, the ally of the Reddy brothers. He's a leader now of the Valmikis, who are again, spread across central Karnataka and parts of Ballari, that area where they actually control quite a bit, and they're a supporting caste again to the dominant communities. And then you have the Muslims. Interestingly, they're around 12 to 13% of the state. SCs, they're again 17% of the state. STs, they're 7% of the state. And you have OBCs who are 29% of the state. But these people, the Okaligas and Lingayats, because of their organizational strength, uh, always presented themselves as an voting bloc, as a single voting bloc. The rest of them did not have that kind of sociological unificatory thing. For example, if you say the ST vote, the ST has so many communities under it. Valmiki is just one. Okay, and then you have say backwards. On the backward class list of Karnataka, I think there are 108 castes, and the Kurubas and the Edigas are the two dominant among the 108. Right, so they play a certain kind of role. So these communities were all there, but they were dominating. The Okaligas and Lingayats were dominating because they presented themselves as a voting bloc, and they had controlled. They had a certain social capital which others did not have. The only change in Karnataka's electoral game was in the 70s, when Devarajaras became the chief minister of the state. And Devarajaras played a reverse game. So therefore, he's seen as a messiah of the OBCs in Karnataka. Although he was a Kshatriya, he was an aristocrat belonging to the Mysore royal family. He completely stitches up the OBCs in Karnataka and keeps the Okaligas, a bit of the Okaligas and a section of the Lingayats, the most oppressed Lingayats, with him, and forms a government magically. And his community, probably there were 25,000 people, which is unthinkable in today's Karnataka, and rules the state for the longest period, almost a decade, 8 to 9 years. He is there in the helm, and emergency is also part of his legacy in Karnataka. But unlike the other places where you heard complaints during the emergency, Devarajaras was the most generous, most munificent, and the most accommodating chief minister during the emergency era, which he uses to bring about maximum reforms in Karnataka. So he brings in backward class reservation. He does the land reform. Lakhs and lakhs of land gets redistributed to the poor of Karnataka. So he becomes a darling of the masses. And Indira Gandhi is finally dependent on a Devarajaras for her political revival, and that's the Chikmagalur election of 1978. So, except for this experiment of 10 years, when all the chief ministers who were to become, all the leaders who were to later become chief ministers were all created by him. For example, Bangarappa, uh, Mallikarjun Kharge, a potential chief minister, was groomed by him. Veerappa Moily was a small-time advocate somewhere in some small, sessions court in Karkala or somewhere else, a small court, and he picks him up, gives him a ticket, and gets him elected. And he becomes the chief minister later. Bangarappa grows up as a mass leader of the OBCs. And, people, Dharam Singh, Kharge, and Sidramaya also, always wanted to present himself as the second reincarnation of Aras and all that. So the leadership, he was a great leadership scout. He created new leadership in Karnataka, changed the game entirely, but played the social engineering, social justice, egalitarian game. So this is broadly the caste thing in Karnataka. Now, what has Bommai done, and what is this whole rejigging that has happened that you asked me about? So as now, till now, more or less, these communities, there was a status quoist kind of pattern in their voting, and that is reflected in the vote shares. See, there is no major drastic change in vote shares of political parties in Karnataka. Now, it's been status quo. For example, Deve Gowda has always commanded that 20%. Come what may, come Modi, come Vajpayee, come whoever, his 20% is safe. The BJP is the only party which has grown quite a bit, but then they have sort of come and settled around 33, 34%. Congress is a party which has seen a lot of decline from 1982 election on, they've only seen a decline of their vote share. They've won and got a little more only when the Janta Party has splintered or the Janta Dal has splintered. And when the Janta Party has come back together, as it happened after the 89 elections, or when it has come back together in 94, they have not been able to get more than 35%. So it's mostly status quoist vote share that we see in Karnataka politics, and that is what the BJP thought should sort of rework. So we don't know if the quota change that has happened, which I'll explain, will completely rejig this thing, or and because more you splinter the caste quota, and people, a lot of people have to eat the same pie, eat from the same, divide the same pie, and they get smaller slices, and the charm of quota goes away. Then the BJP probably hopes there is a more universal electorate getting created by default. So you have not spoken against caste, but you're given so much representation that there is no incentive to go and vote on caste lines. So this is what they have tried, and we really don't know if it's going to work, because this is the first time. For example, the SCs, in Karnataka, they had a certain standard reservation. The standard reserved seats were all there, but this time what has happened is there was a demand for a long time to create internal reservation within the SCs. That's because there is what we call the left Dalit and the right Dalit in Karnataka. The left Dalit was the more oppressed Dalit. He was the oppressed among the oppressed classes, but had very little to do with political empowerment. The political empowerment was all the forte of the right Dalit. In fact, the Congress politics was dominated by the right Dalit. That is the Karges and Parmeshwars and others. So there was this growing and simmering kind of discontent in a in the dominant section of the Dalits for a very long time. And I think in 2008, Edurappa tapped into that. So after 2008, the most oppressed Dalits in Karnataka have voted for the BJP. That is the Madigas. They have also a mutt and a seminary and a pontiff now. So in Karnataka, that is another sociological phenomena. Even the oppressed have mutts and pontiffs and wear saffron, and it's not just the Brahmin mutts, right? So this particular combination of this trying to splinter the SC vote by giving reservation to the dominant unhappy lot and trying to build new leadership there, we don't know how that will play out. In fact, of course, the reservation has been promised. It's not that it has been given, because there's a lot of procedure to be followed, but there is an expression of intent by the BJP government. So there is a lot more process to be followed after that. So that is one thing. And then what they have done is that the Muslims were under the OBC quota in Karnataka, 4%. Deve Gowda was the one who had given that in 1995 when he was chief minister, and he had very cleverly, because you can't give religion-based quota, he put them under the OBCs, and all chief ministers and all political parties had accepted that. Nobody had challenged it. But now the BJP came and this is, 2 months back, they just tried to remove that and try to redistribute that and put the Muslims under the EWS, that is the economically weaker section thing. So that created a bit of furor, but the other secular parties were so cautious that they did not want to speak loudly about it, because they thought they would anger the majority. And the BJP was waiting for them to do that. But luckily, the Congress or the Janta Dal, I don't know, I shouldn't be saying luckily, but they did not raise it, and they sort of let it be. But the courts have now put a stay on that. See, it's gone to the Supreme Court, and I think something is happening there. So the government has also given an assurance that they're not going to go ahead with it until the court clears it. And they had also exceeded the 50% quota, that reservation thing that can be given. So there were a lot of ifs and buts, but they still expressed their intent to rejig the whole thing. And another very major change that this fellow did, Bommai did, was to give internal reservation within Lingayats. Again, same logic. What happened with the SCs, scheduled castes, where the dominant group was less empowered than the others? In the Lingayats too, one small subset called the Banajigas were controlling political power in the state. It could be Nijlingappa, it could be Yediyurappa, it could be Virendra Patil, it could be J.H. Patil, except for S.R. Bommai and Basuraj Bommai, who were Sadar Lingayats. All the rest of them were Banajiga Lingayats, and Banajigas are trading community. They are like they're the trading community, and they control political power. But the Pancham Salis, who constituted 70% of Lingayats, were not politically empowered. So there was a demand for the last 3 years to give internal reservation for these people in the 15% quota that had been given to the OBCs. So now, Bommai's government, in an ingenious fashion, created two extra things. There was 2A, 2B. He created 2C, 2D, and divided the quota there, and exceeded the 50%. Put throughout Muslims from under the OBC quota into the EWS thing, then splintered the SC thing, and STs have been demanding for higher quota. I think they have catered to that as well. So all this has happened. So as I told you earlier, if the pie gets splintered and splintered and smaller and becomes smaller and smaller, I don't know what kind of incentive there will remain, because you can create political rhetoric saying I gave it to you, but finally the person at the last mile should be able to experience that kind of empowerment. So we have to wait for the next 3-4 years to see if that empowerment happens and how things will get turned before that. And it's also very interestingly, Arun, the last, it's the swan song, as so to say, of a lot of mandal politicians in Karnataka. Sidramaya, it will be almost his last election. Deve Gowda, it will be almost his last election. Yediyurappa, last election. Kharge, last election. So, it is bound to change. There's going to be a huge generational change, but we don't know if BJP will be able to set that narrative, or there will be a new leadership in Karnataka which will create a new kind of egalitarian politics or communal politics. We don't know. So that is where we stand now.
And the BJP goes into this election sort of viewed as a divided house with, with Basavaraj Bommai constantly facing this threat of being removed till the election. But now it seems to be that he's going to contest as the future CM candidate as well.
Yes.
BJP leader BL Santosh is said to have played an outsized role in the distribution of tickets, which has angered a lot of people. How do you view these divisions that are there within the BJP? Are they something that will play out in this election?
See, what is happening in the BJP is very interesting, in the sense a lot of people have rebelled, they've gone out. People who you thought are completely wedded to the idea of the RSS and the BJP have gone out, and Bombay himself was facing a Damosil sword, so to say, and people thought he will not get the Shigao ticket. But then all of that has been so now settled. You're actually campaigning now. The last withdrawal is over, and the list is settled. So one thought, BJP will cut a lot more tickets of sitting MLAs. That has not happened, and it's also a complete misunderstanding in the media that exists, that it is Santosh who has got the maximum kind of benefits out of this list. Edurappa has quietly got what he wanted. So Edurappa is a cat. I think if you remember, I wrote that piece when Edurappa was about to be thrown out, but would still survive. And I wrote that piece, a cat with 9 lives, for Edurappa, that piece in Troy. So Edurappa still managed because he was in the parliamentary board and he put pressure, and all that happened. And see, Santosh, the name that you mentioned is very interesting, because Santosh is a Brahmin, and Santosh is the organizing secretary nationally. And before he became that, he was the organizing secretary in Karnataka. And what is the traditional role of the organizing secretary who comes from the RSS? He is the representative of the RSS in the BJP. So, what is he supposed to do? He's supposed to create new leadership, create newer possibilities for the party. If Yadurappa is getting old, he had to scout for a new leader, groom him. So, this fellow had to play the role of a mentor. He came into Karnataka as an organizing secretary in 2006. Ever since, he has nursed the ambition of himself becoming the chief minister. So what he did was he created a kind of bandwagon or an army of acolytes rather than create alternative leadership for the BJP. And that is where the problem is for the BJP, because they don't seem to have strong second line leaders for Yadurappa. Everybody else is, kind of, a weak kind of proposition to the BJP, because they don't have an appeal across the state. If an Edurappa goes, he can say, I'll get 50 seats, I'll get 60 seats, he can influence some 80 seats. No. The rest of them have to struggle to win their own constituency. For example, Bommai, when can he go and say that I will, on my personal appeal and charishma, I am going to get 25 seats for the BJP? No, he can't. See, there are very few people who can do that in Karnataka. Deve Gowda can do it, and he has done that for 70 years. Kumar Swamy can do it because he's still voted as the most popular CM, even if his party is not going to get those many seats. All the markings, if you see all the surveys, he's always said he's the best CM, because his first term extremely popular as a chief minister, not so much the second term. Then Sidramaya commands that kind of, he can say that I'll get people elected, although he is very unsure of his own constituency now. And that shows the chinks in the armor there. And then, Yediyurappa, Deve Gowda, Kumar Swamy, and Sidramaya. I think they're the only four who can speak the language of a mass leader. The rest of them don't seem to. DK Shivkumar, let DK Shivkumar win his own constituency and three others in the vicinity. Let's see. That it's that kind of. They may have money, they may speak big and all that. So this is the kind of situation that exists. So essentially, this whole movement of the leaders within political parties and all of that seems to have sort of taken them in a certain direction. And BL Santosh, we are coming back to the BL Santosh thing. So he was a Brahmin who does not have caste support. The Brahmins are a minority in Karnataka. Like anywhere else, they're a minority. But he tried to play this kind of game, which I personally feel, I may be wrong, I would be very, very happy to be corrected, but I think he has damaged the party much more than anybody could have, because the factional element that was there, that sort of resisted Yediyurappa or created alternate voices which became counterproductive, all of that was done by Santosh after the demise of H.N. Anant Kumar. Earlier, the traditional rivalry was between Yediyurappa and Anant Kumar, who was also a Brahmin. And as long as Anant Kumar was there, Santosh was in the shadow, always nursing that ambition though, because Anant Kumar was always deputed to Delhi and they thought Anant Kumar will be there and Yediyurappa will be here, like the kind of splintering of roles that Ramakrishna Hegde and Deve Gowda had, but Deve Gowda went and took the Delhi throne. It's like that. So this man has completely created a lot. Created a lot of problems within the state unit. So he headed a faction. So that's not a very nice thing to say about an organizing secretary of the BJP, who should be actually bringing people together. So he's played a disruptive role. So we
But
don't know how. Yeah.
yeah, but is that all a factor that will hurt the BJP going into this election, or do you think they've done enough to kind of hold on to power?
No, see they see because it's a national party, they have money. There is the Modi narrative that comes and overrides everything. There is an Amit Shah game that comes and overrides everything. They may retain 60, 70 seats. We don't know. But as of today, nobody, including the BJP. I met a BJP parliamentarian this morning, whom of course I can't name, but he said, "Mujhe dhar lag raha hai." I hope we don't become third in the state. That's the kind of lack of confidence within the BJP. See, there's still 15 days time. Something else may happen. The Congress may blunder, some other narrative, or the BJP may itself blunder and fall down. And then the beneficiary of all this may be the JDS, and the JDS is being entirely underestimated. Because, see, JDS, the Okaliga thing is there, of course, but JDS has inducted about 2022 people who are super strong in their constituencies after they rebelled inside their parties and they've been given tickets. Right? That's one. The second thing is there is an affinity, the Muslim affinity is always, been there. People have always liked Deve Gowda, the Muslims. And that is because of the reservation and the kind of politics that he has played. So, what will happen if Muslims who are a supporting caste in a lot of constituencies, especially in Hyderabad, Karnataka region and in the Mysore region, Mysore belt and other places, what happens if, say, an OIC and a Chandrasekhar Rao and JDS and SDPI, who are also contesting a lot of seats, they all come together and they decide that in each of these constituencies where the Congress is winning, let's undercut the Muslim vote. If that happens, then the Congress's numbers will drop. So even the survey that I saw yesterday is not giving a 150 seat majority to the Congress. It's somewhere in the range of 110 and 115. So which is still, you may become the single largest party. And there also, see, the Congress problem is also around that they don't always create a narrative which is strong. They wait for a default opportunity. They think that the BJP is not performing, therefore we will win. So somebody told me this morning that it is not that the Congress is running ahead; it's just that the BJP is walking slowly. You can it's a case of the glass half filled or a half empty kind of analogy, right? So I am really concerned that the Congress is not reaching out to communities and giving out a kind of message that they ought to be giving aggressively. See, they are a very diffident lot. They don't know if they go out and speak for the Muslims, what would happen. They don't want to be seen cultivating the Christians too much. They don't want to be seen, with the contradictions inside the Congress would not allow going and hobnobbing with a certain section of the Dalits. And then they think that the STs are a gone case. We can't get their vote. Coastal Karnataka, if you look at the kind of abdication that has happened in the last 30 years, every big leader came from that area and in the All India Congress. Be it BK Hari Prasad, Margaret Alva, then Oscar Fernandez, Janardhan Pujari, Veerappa Moily, and look at the state of the party in the coastal belt. They have abdicated. They lose, they never go back to the constituency. So we don't know but they have an infrastructure across the state, which is not the case with the Janta Dal. The Janta Dal, I always feel that if the BJP voter is frustrated with the party and he thinks that this election I'll teach my leaders a lesson, then his angry vote will not get shifted to the Congress, but because it is against his conscience. He'll think that these fellows, I'm a BJP guy, how can I vote a Congress? So that anger vote may go to the JDS. So there may be a collateral benefit for them and a collateral damage for the Congress. We don't know. See, these are all speculative things. You and I, as journalists, keep on playing with all these theories. We may not be correct, we may not be accurate, but I think, or have the humility to accept if we go wrong after the elections and the numbers are out there, right?
But you spoke of the Congress campaign and how it's kind of reliant on a sort of status quoism where the other party will fall, ergo we will win.
Yes.
And that's particularly interesting because one of the main characters in this election for the Congress is Rahul Gandhi, who is sort of attempting a political revival of sorts for with
Yeah.
his disqualification as an MP and things like that. Um, is this the election that gives him that boost in image and credibility?
Unfortunately, Arun, I don't see an iota of sympathy being expressed for his disqualification. I don't think that issue has ever come up. Even Adani is not being pushed to the front. I think the Congress, which is a wise thing actually, is trying to play like a regional party. It's trying to contain the national narrative. In fact, they are trying to say Karnataka belongs to, us. Karnataka belongs to the Kannadigas, and they're trying to play the local game. And even yesterday, when Amit Shah said you should hand over the state to Modi for good governance and all that, there has been a huge backlash. If you look at the Kannada newspapers today, all the debate is around that. Why should we give our state to somebody in Delhi? No, that kind of talk is there, and so Priyanka Gandhi, who was in Mysore yesterday, has also made that point. She has said, why should we hand over our thing? It's like the Rahul Gandhi Union of States kind of argument coming to the fore without realizing that Congress is a national party. And the BJP, they're actually, if you look at it, it's an intelligent way to play the game. On the other hand, you're also conceding your national space indirectly, without applying much mind because you don't have an option. So Rahul Gandhi per se, I don't think the sympathy thing exists. I don't think the Adani thing is being pushed a little too much, or this crony capitalism or whatever. Because also, see, look at their PCC president. He is quote unquote seen as a scamster. Not because the Modi regime came and did something else. Even if you go and ask in his own constituency, he has been that kind of a person. He has a huge image problem. Not see, Sidramaya is their savior, quote unquote savior, but not so much DK Shiv Kumar. But he's fancied himself as a troubleshooter, muzzle man, money man, all kinds of things. But when it comes to becoming the chief minister of a state, there is a certain, and especially a state like Karnataka, which is pretty evolved compared to any North Indian state, and we give 1 rupee to the central exchequer, and we get back only 65 paise or 70 paise. So, which means we are contributing to the economy of the country far more than, say, Uttar Pradesh or Madhya Pradesh, which gives 1 rupee and takes back 1 rupee 50 paisa. So that's a small analogy. So it's a flourishing state, although the 60-62% of the revenues to run this state comes from Bangalore. And Bangalore has a certain iconic image now, globally. So there are a lot of things at stake. So when you are choosing the chief minister of a state, I mean, you whatever may be the national narrative about a lot of leaders, so far people who have become the chief ministers of the state have had that kind of stature. It could be a Deve Gowda or a S.M. Krishna or a Sidramaya or a Yediyurappa. They've all had that kind of basic, preparation, long-term basic preparation. So that, is a casualty now if you're trying to project somebody who's your KPCC president as your chief ministerial candidate. So the Rahul Gandhi factor is, I don't think it's a revival election. It can't be for him. If the Congress wins, it's not because of Rahul Gandhi. If the Congress wins, it's not because the people of Karnataka are angry that Rahul Gandhi has been disqualified, and therefore they're going to elect the Congress party here. So it's a very messy kind of a situation for the Congress completely.
And again, I know you're saying it's being fought as a very regional election that decides the state's future, but the Karnataka election is that sort of indicator of the 2024 elections, at least as far as the media is concerned, where we're looking at it as a sign of which way the wind is blowing in some ways. Do you
Yeah.
think it's that, or do you think that we are just typically overblowing it 1 year in advance?
No, this whole thing about this election becoming an indicator for 2024. People love to say that Karnataka has always set that agenda. Since Karnataka has always voted against the regime in Delhi. But that's, I would discount all those theories after Modi has become prime minister. Whether we like Modi or we don't like Modi, we have to admit that they do elections in a certain way which has never been done earlier. So I will not go take that very seriously. Even if the BJP loses 2023 elections in Karnataka, it's still a long way to 2024, and you'll have to face Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan before that. So the narrative may be set there. And Rajasthan, going by the kind of dissidents that you see, may go back to the BJP. And we don't know what's going to happen in Chhattisgarh, where again there is a huge tussle between leaders inside the Congress. So, all this is ifs and buts do exist. It may give you an indication, but if the Congress wins, the BJP may also be scared that the financial position of the Congress to fight the 2024 thing will go up. So they may be in a kind of desperate situation where they may say that, okay, let's ensure that the Congress does not win. Never mind if we don't win. So then what happens? What kind of game gets played? So all these things are there. I wouldn't go with the straight theory that 2024 is set with Karnataka. No, I don't think so.
And finally, I just want to ask about also the Congress campaign that's been fought. Like you said that Siddaramaiah is the savior, DK Shivakumar is the Pradesh Congress president, but doesn't have the image. They seem to be waiting for the BJP to fall apart to get to a win.
Yeah,
Then what is the Congress, or what are the opposition parties even fighting the election on? Because
very good
uh,
question. Very good
communalism
question.
is communalism is not included. Your caste quota is something you're not talking about. What are parties fighting about then?
Very good question. All these. In my column, I think that will appear tomorrow in the Toy Place. I've spoken about how the Congress has bent backwards to welcome a lot of Lingayat leaders who really don't matter. See, the Panchamsali thing that has been worked out in within the BJP pushed out a lot of these other leaders because they were unhappy that a certain section of the Lingayats overpowered them, and they lost tickets and they didn't get tickets. So the Congress face of the Congress campaign, or the chairman of the Congress campaign committee, MB Patil, who's also a Lingayat and not a Banajiga, not a Panchamsali, belongs to a small subsect. He has been going overboard, trying to build this Brahmin versus Lingayat narrative. This is the same person who built the narrative in 2018 of independent religion, Lingayats as an independent religion. So that had floundered. So we don't know whether this is going to work. So he is now happily saying, "Oh, we welcome Lingayats back home, and this is a great moment. This is going to change the elections." So that has been the biggest kind of thing that they've said in the recent days. Other than that, their welfare agenda is again very predictable. Trying to say we will give kind of dole for unemployed youths. They're not saying we'll create employment for youths. Now that's the difference. They're saying if you're a diploma holder, we'll give you a smaller sum. If you're a degree holder, we'll give you a slightly higher sum. We'll give 2,000 rupees for women who run the households. Then something else for somebody else. So this is their manifestos are not out as yet to get a detailed feel. But if you look at just the ideas, Janata Dal is leagues ahead. Deve Gowda has always gone with a program and a plan, and his son H.D. Kumarswamy has gone around the state twice already with his Pancharatna program, which is a clear, development slash welfare thing that he's going to bring in if he becomes the chief minister. So Congress is still not bolstered that kind of a narrative. Congress is, the default narrative is what I'm really surprised. They've not set that narrative at all, and they have for the longest period spoken about scams of the BJP, 40% government, that and this. But those were not the scams that they broke. Hardworking journalists like you and me broke those scams. And they only are trying to ride over that. And this 40% charge was a charge made by the Contractors Association, they are not doodh mein dule hue kind of characters, So it's a very strange kind of a thing. They had to pick scams. There were bigger scams to pick. But if you pick those scams, then it's going to have a kind of effect where the BJP can go back a little and find more about you. And they may find the origin of the scam in the Congress regime that had ruled the state before. So, even the scam thing, the kind of issues they've been speaking is just basically trying to create a hawa rather than present something substantial. So they're not spoken the Adani thing, they've not spoken Rafael. They were all substantial issues. So the Congress has not replicated that, nor has the Congress stood by girls in the Muslim community who were being attacked during the hijab thing. Not a single voice. When Rahul Gandhi was walking, doing the Bharat Jodo Yatra, passing through Old Mysore, does not utter Tipu Sultan even once. Now, how do you expect 13% of the population to stand by you? So I really don't know what narratives are going to work for them. They may win by default, they may be the single largest party. But I can't, if you ask me to pin down and say X, Y, Z is going to deliver a victory for these people, I'm not very sure.
Just 1 second, Srini. So Gatha, just 1 second. Okay, so yeah, we have a final set of questions, literally the last set. The JDS you mentioned as a kingmaker of sorts, and they eternally seem to play that role in the recent past, at least, where they are the party that gets whoever wants to get to power, gets them over the line in a sense. Uh, do you see that again? Is that a serious role for them this time?
No, see, I mean, I don't think we should use the word kingmaker, because you should, I think, I mean, anybody who sort of poses that question should ask, why do they become kingmakers? It's, if you don't ask that question, then perennially they will be kingmakers, of course. uh, because, I mean, it's not that it's a party which is, a wavering kind of party. It's a solid party with a solid program and with a solid 20% vote share, which has never sort of gone down. And Deve Gowda's stature is a patriarch of the Kaveri basin, right? So you can't deny a lot of things. So they get their vote. If the Congress does not get a majority, it is not their problem. So Congress, instead of saying, they are the kingmakers, they shouldn't be made kingmakers, you better go and get more seats. Or if the BJP is saying one vote for JDS is the vote for Congress, so don't vote JDS, then the narrative is that you go and get seats. They have their people who trust them and believe them in 3 or 4 districts, and they have remained faithful. So, I mean, this, I don't know whether it will happen that way. You shouldn't be surprised if we become the number two party, as one of the BJP parliamentarians told me that he's mortally afraid that they may become the number three party and JDS may get elevated. And there may be a lot of collateral benefits and collateral damages this election may see. But yes, I mean, there is a possibility that, I mean, nobody can get a majority, and these people may control the numbers to form a government. And but of course, there is the X factor with Karnataka, which is the Operation Lotus kind of things that they have been doing, and it was perfected in Karnataka, if you remember. The whole game of, I mean, splintering elected representatives in the opposite party and bringing them to form new governments, getting them re-elected on new tickets, holding a dozen or dozen and odd by-elections. All that was perfected in Karnataka. We don't know if the BJP will play that game. BJP has the money, certainly.
Sugata, those are my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add as final words?
No, I mean, I think essentially, it's. I mean, I've enjoyed this, watching this election,
Mhm.
or continue to watch this, because not because somebody's going to win or somebody's going to lose. It gives you a pulse of how, I mean, there's this collective thinking that happens during elections, which is so very fascinating. So I'm not so much a person who chases numbers, try to find out who's going to win, who's going to lose. I'm always very interested in how people are thinking in pockets, and that fascinates me. And I think, I mean, I'm finding this election incredible, because the collective pockets of thinking have increased.
I have to ask this now in light of that. What are these collective pockets of thinking that
No,
are
whether,
there?
I
Like,
mean, basically whatever that I explained to you, whether how does how does a certain community think, whether they should go
right,
with X or Y,
right,
and
right.
what is the rationale that they are
Okay.
giving themselves. Whether
Huh.
corruption becomes a serious issue. Corruption has never been a serious issue in Karnataka
Mm.
from
Oh,
1978.
okay.
The Ballari
But
thing
is
was
that
a different thing.
acceptance?
Yeah.
But
And it's the costliest election happens in Karnataka. The
Right.
per vote per constituency,
Cost.
rate of spending
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
cost of vote, buying a vote is very high in Karnataka.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
I
yes.
somehow thought it would be Tamil Nadu and Kerala, but okay.
No, no, no. We have
Yeah.
far. We are world champions.
Thanks,
So,
Sugata, for
thank
this.
you,
I
Arun.
will,
I enjoyed it.
yes, we will share this on our other platforms as well. I'll send you the link when we do. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining, and thank you to all of you who've been listening in as well.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you. Greatly enjoyed it. Thanks.